Hurt me with the truth, but never comfort me with a lie. As I'm sorting out everything, it's Yahweh I will not deny. And they lied to me, they lied to you so sweetly, as we trusted in them completely. Wake up, wake up, wake up, you that are spiritually dead. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, you little sleepyhead. Yahshua, our Messiah, is going to return any day. What will you be doing when you stand before him? What will you say? Trust in the Spirit of Yahweh, it will show you everything. But you have to love the truth, no matter what hardship it brings. What will you have to give up? What will you have to prove to make it into the kingdom? Tell me, what do you plan to do? Wake up, wake up, wake up, to be spiritually led. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, spiritually be fed. Wake up, spiritually be fed.
Shalom, welcome, hello, and thank you for joining me for another study. We're going to do today a controversial one of the more controversial ones. It's going to be eye-opening for some of you. Some of you are going to have to pay extra special attention to their books to make sure I'm not making this stuff up, because it's going to be stuff you haven't heard before. Well, here's hoping that you and I can just go through these scriptures as quickly as possible. There's a lot. There's actually enough to more than double this study's length. I didn't want to do that to you guys because it's going to be long enough as it is. I might actually have to break it into parts. We'll see how it goes as we go through these scriptures really quick. What you just heard was a lovely song, "Wake Up," from Tamar de Berg. Her ministry of music is listed on the beginning on her video on the bottom. But you can also just follow the YouTube link that I put in, as I always do, in the top corner, and get some of her great music. Very, very heartfelt music, worshiping our Messiah and our Creator. Okay, so here we go, getting into this study. I pray that the Father and the Son and, of course, the Spirit fills us and moves us to be on the right page, so that we're all edified and none deceived, not me and not by me. In our Messiah Yahshua's name, amen. So here we go into the sword, and we're going to start in 2 Corinthians 11, and we're going to start in verse 4, which is going to give us the title. For indeed, if he who is coming proclaims another Yahshua, whom we have not proclaimed, or if you receive a different spirit which you have not received, or a different good news which you have not accepted, you put up with it well enough. All right, now, let's go over to the King James, because I know there's a lot of folks that means more to than anything else. All right, let's read the same verse again. For if he that comes preaches another Yahshua, whom we have not preached, or if you receive another spirit which you have not received, meaning from him or them, or the doctrine of the book, or another gospel which you have not accepted, you might well bear with him. Now, bear is an interesting word here, because it actually comes from kaloche, which means that you're happy with it. It's beautiful, it's excellent, it's noble, it's commendable, it's honorable. We're happy to get this false doctrine. So, this is an interesting verse, which we're going to come back to. But this is where just so that you know that I didn't make up this title. This title comes from the book, Another Messiah, Another Yahshua. And I want to explain why I do these videos really quick, because that's a question that bears investigation. What's in it for me? And we're going to start these out by going to Ezekiel, and we'll go to chapter 33, I believe. And we're going to start reading in verse 1 and read down a little bit. This will explain to you why I do what I do. And I'm going to switch back over to the ISR version because I think that's easier to flow. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of your people, and you shall say to them, when I bring the sword upon a land, and the people of the land shall take a man from their borders, and shall make him their watchman. You know, there's a lot of people who call themselves watchmen. And this is what, when you say that, or when someone makes you that, and you accept the responsibility, this is what's on you. And he sees the sword coming upon the land, and shall blow with the shofar, the trumpet, and shall warn the people. Then whoever shall hear the voice of the shofar, and shall not take warning, who hears word and doesn't listen, if the sword comes and takes him away, his blood is on his own head. He heard the voice of the shofar, but he did not take warning. His blood is on himself. But he who takes warning shall deliver his being. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and shall not blow with the shofar, if you see people following false doctrine and you don't say something, and these people shall not be warned, and the sword comes and takes away any being from among them, he is taken away in his crookedness, and his blood I require at the watchman's hands. When you hear someone spouting false doctrine, it's time for you to reason with that person. Make sure which one of you has the false doctrine. Because if you're right, and you know something, and they're on a wrong path, and you don't say something, guess what, my brothers and sisters? Their blood is on your hands. And you, son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Yisrael, and you shall hear a word from my mouth, and you shall warn them for me. When I say to the wrong, O wrong one, you shall certainly die, and you have not spoken to warn the wrong one from his way, that wrong one shall die in his crookedness, and his blood I require at your hand. You're like an anti-Messiah, aren't you? But when you have warned the wrong to turn from his way, and he has not turned from his way, he shall die in his crookedness, and you have delivered your being. Okay, so that's enough. I think you get the idea of why I do that. And I guess there's another we should look at it really quick in the same vein. Let's go to Isaiah, and we'll go to chapter 30, and we'll start reading in, let's say, I think it's around 8. Let's look. Might be wrong. Here we go. Now he's being ordered by the Spirit here, and go, write it before them on a tablet, and inscribe it on a scroll, that is for a latter day, a witness forever. Now we know Yahshua quoted from Isaiah a lot. Okay, so this is the tablet, this is the scroll that we're reading, the book of Isaiah. I mean, it's a digital pocket sword version on my phone right now, but it's the same thing. And inscribe on a scroll that is for a latter day, not for his day, but for our day, a witness forever. That this is a rebellious people, lying children who refuse to hear the Torah of Yahweh. In our day, people are going to refuse to hear the Torah? Well, yeah, look. Who says to the seers, do not see, and to the prophets, do not prophesy to us what is right, speak to us what is smooth. Prophesy deceit. Yeah, well, look at that. That's the ear tickling. We hear about later. We're going to read that verse too. Look, today, this is what people are doing. They're following the ear ticklers. They're not following what the book says. They're following what they want because lawlessness is sweet. Turn aside from this way. Swerve from the path. Cause the set apart one of Israel to cease from before us. Therefore, thus says the set apart one of Israel. Who says this? Does it come from me? No, it comes from him, the set apart one of Israel. You know who that is. Because you despise this word and trust in oppression and perverseness and rely on them. Oppression, meaning you can't speak the truth because it's a hate crime. Perverseness, we can just let that one go. I mean, if you can't think of something perverse going on in churchianity today, you're not really looking. And you rely on them. Therefore, this crookedness is to you like a breach ready to fall, a bulge in a high wall whose breaking comes suddenly, swiftly. And he shall break it like the breaking of a potter's vessel, which is broken in pieces without sparing. so that there is not found among its fragments a shard to take fire from the hearth or to take water from the cistern. And it goes on in this vein. Obviously, this is something else that was quoted by the Messiah too. All right. We know what this means. Don't just be honest with yourself, and we're going to look at the scripture. There's no interpretation in what we're reading today. There is no opinions. We're just going to read from the book. And if you don't agree with what we're going to read, it's not me. It's not my doctrine that you disagree with. It's the written word. And like I said, there's so many verses. We're going to have to go through this quickly. And I could double this. I could double the length of this with verses that all say the same thing over and over again. There's no opinions. Let's pop forward to 2 Timothy, if you got a minute. 2 Timothy. And we're going to start reading in chapter 4. And we're going to start in verse 1 and start with our controversy. We're just right out of the box here, because it's going to make sense later. All right, lots of people believe that when you die, you go to heaven. Okay, this is not scriptural. This is nowhere in Scripture. In fact, Scripture says something completely different. It says that when you die, you're dead in the ground until the resurrection. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Not ashes to ashes, dust to, you're going to make it up to heaven. Or hell, I guess. I don't know where people think they're going. All right, so here's the verse that we used. Here's one of dozens of verses that prove this. And I'm going to do a video on this eventually, on heaven and hell and the rapture, because it's all tied in together. As you read this today, you'll see there's one being that was cast out of heaven who's trying to get back there. Okay. Do you serve him or do you serve Messiah? You got to choose. You can't serve both. You can't serve two masters. In the sight of Elohim and the master Yahshua Messiah, who shall judge the living and the dead when they die? At the funeral? No. Who will judge the living and the dead at his appearing and his reign. I guess maybe you could think you could get into heaven without judgment. Then what's the point of heaven and hell? What's the point of it if there's no judging? Or do you think everyone goes to heaven and then later on you get sorted out later and some people go to hell? I mean, I don't know what you think. But this plainly follows what the biblical idea is ashes to ashes and dust to dust. In the sight of Elohim and the master Yahshua Messiah, who shall judge the living and the dead at his appearing and his reign. Well, he's not ruling the earth yet, and the second coming hasn't happened. So, you think about that one. I earnestly charge you. Proclaim the word. Be urgent in season and out of season. Convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. Okay, so what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to discuss the scriptures. We're supposed to reason together. If we hear somebody saying something that isn't scriptural, we're supposed to talk to them and say, this isn't scriptural and here's why. And then find out whose doctrine is correct for our own edification and for theirs. And the only doctrine should be biblical doctrine. Doctrine is a written word. The only doctrine that should come into this is the doctrine of the book. If it's not in the book, it's not. Period. Okay. Because, there's a lot of people out there that I talk to everybody. I'm annoying. So when I talk to people, I talk to rabbis and imams and priests and pastors and regular folk, and all of them say the same thing when they're understand that they don't know the book. They say, "Oh, I don't argue scripture. I'm not here to argue with you." Well, I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm trying to show you what the book says and see if I have the wrong understanding, and to warn you if you do, because that's what is commanded to me so that I don't lose my own salvation. Convict, warn, appeal, but I'm nice about it. Because it doesn't say belittle, poke fun at. It says with patience in teaching. So if someone doesn't understand what the book says, you just keep reading it to them. You give them some parables and explain that they're parables. You don't say, you're going to hell, you silly old fool. Why can't you just understand? Okay. Proclaim the word, be urgent in season, out of season. Convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. For there shall come a time when they shall not bear sound teaching, but according to their own desires they shall heap up, make a giant pile of, the majority again, for themselves, teachers tickling the ear. And they shall indeed turn away from the truth and be turned aside to myths. Now, if your congregation indulges in myths, Easter bunnies, Santa Claus, the Messiah was, well, I'm not even gonna go down this road right now. We'll save that for later. You have to look and see if you are learning myths at your assembly, and if you're learning myths and you're in the assembly from the majority, from the mainstream of ear ticklers, not one or two. They're heaped up. They heap up for themselves teachers tickling the ear, and they shall indeed turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to the myths. But you be sober in all matters, suffer hardships, do the work of an evangelist, and accomplish your service completely. I want to go over to read this one in the King James again. I'm going to be going back and forth a lot. I charge you, therefore, before Yah and the Messiah Yahshua, who shall judge the quick, meaning living, and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Again, it shows it, and that too is just as plain. Preach the word, be instant in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke. Rebuke. It comes from epitema, to show honor to raise the price of, to adjudge, award, merited penalty, to chide. Interesting, right? This isn't be nice and say, oh, well, you're going to have your belief and I'm going to have mine. It doesn't say that. It says, look, I know what you're saying. I get that that's what you learned, but let's look and see what the book says. Because I believe you might be mistaken. That's strong enough. Okay. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, teaching word from the Yah, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers having each itching ears. If you watch YouTube, there's lots of other preachers calling out other preachers as ear ticklers that are teaching just as false doctrine themselves. And they're right nasty talking to each other. You can judge them by their fruits. That's another lesson too. All right, let's just look at our faith. Let's look at our teachers and make sure that there's no myths or holidays that come from other faiths, or the wrong Sabbath, or the wrong food. These teachers from A to Z in churchianity love to say things like, oh, alcohol, that's forbidden in the scriptures. No, it's not. Drunkenness is forbidden. Alcohol isn't. Gambling, gambling is a sin. Really? It's a violation of Torah? No, it's not. Now, I'm not encouraging gambling. I'm not encouraging, drinking. Addictions are not something to be encouraged, and these are both something that if you can't handle, you should stay away from because they destroy your life. But they're not sins because it's not in the book. So if you belong to an assembly that teaches, if you drink alcohol, you're sinning, then you're following false doctrine, you're following a fable, you're in an ear tickler assembly. Okay. Anyway, we should always be moral. We should always do the right thing. But teaching that something is law that isn't is pharisaical. That's what the Pharisees did, and we should watch out for it. Let's right now pop over, if you got a minute. We'll go to Matthew. And I'm going to go to chapter 24. And again, remember, read the whole chapter. Make sure I'm not picking verses out of context. That's not what I do. Matthew 24. I'm going to flip back over to ISR to make it easy on my lips. And going out, Yahshua went away from the set-apart place, the temple. And his taught ones came near to point out to him the buildings of the temple. And Yahshua said to them, do you not see all these? Truly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another at all, which shall not be thrown down. And we know that happened in 70 AD. In fact, on the entire Temple Mount, the only bit of construction that was left was a then buried retaining wall on the edge of the Temple Mount, which is now referred to as the Wailing Wall. The temple itself was completely destroyed. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the taught ones came to him separately, saying, say to us, When shall this be? What shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And Yahshua answering said to them, Take heed that no one leads you astray. For many shall come in my name. Now, remember, in the Greek, it's the many. It's a lot, the most, the majority. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah. Who are they saying is the Messiah? Are they saying Buddha is the Messiah? No. They're saying that, well, they call him Jesus is the Messiah. And they shall lead the many astray. They shall lead many astray. Not the little, not the few, not the ones that are on the straight and narrow. Many. And you shall begin to hear of fightings and reports of fightings to see that you're not troubled. I really wanted you to get through 5 on this one. You can keep reading. It doesn't change anything. This is the key part for the study today. They're not coming in their own name here. We'll get to that in a minute. But they're not saying, hey, listen, I'm the second coming. There's plenty that do that, but that's not who he's talking about here. He's talking about the men who come saying, as in quotes, I am the Messiah, meaning Yahshua is the Messiah. Otherwise, it would say, saying they are the Messiah. It doesn't say that in this line. Okay, so these are people that say Yahshua, we'll call him Jesus, they'll call him the Christ. Okay. Now let's just pop down a little bit in the same chapter here. You know what? Actually, let's pop back to 11 for a minute. I think that's important to do. Matthew 11. And you know what? I'm so indecisive because I don't want to rock your worlds too quickly here. Let's go back to Matthew 24. I'm sorry, people, brothers and sisters. I'm sorry, and we'll go to verse 11 here. And many false prophets shall rise up and lead many astray. Now remember, prophets are people who prophesy and people who profess. So if people are teachers, they're prophets. And because of the increase in lawlessness, is that lawlessness in the world? Is that people who decide not to pay their taxes? Is that people who don't license their dog or get marriage licenses? No, lawlessness is biblical, the biblical law. And because of the increase in lawlessness, which we see today, there's the fable of lawlessness, the love of many shall become cold, but he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. And the good news of this reign shall be proclaimed in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end shall come. Okay, so now the people who are listening to this might know that over the last 20, 30 years, most especially since 2009, there's been an awakening of people to whole Bible, to reading what the book says instead of what's been taught in the fables. And this is starting to be taught everywhere. You're listening to something right now that I hope, I pray, is part of that. And it's going to hit the whole world. In fact, anyone in the world can look at this right now. And anyone with the internet, which, as you know, is everywhere. But, whose name are they coming in? That's the question. Well, let's get a clue. Let's go to Revelations. And maybe something will be revealed to us. Revelation. Hazor. And we're going to read in chapter 12. And a great sign was seen in the heaven. A woman clad with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head was a crown of 12 stars, and being pregnant, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth, and another sign was seen in heaven. Okay, now here's what I want you to listen to. A great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on his head, and his tail draws a third of the heavens. Okay, that's the devil and the third of the angels that he brought down with him, the messengers. And he threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth. And that's Israel and the Messiah, to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she bore a male child, who was to shepherd all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught away to Elohim and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim to be nourished for the tribulation, 1,260 days. And there came to be fighting in heaven. And Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought. But they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. Where was he cast down from? Heaven. Where is he trying to get back to? Where is he fighting to remain? Heaven. Who's interested in going to heaven? And the great dragon was thrown out, that old serpent. Now, who is this old serpent? Oh, called the devil and Satan, who leads the world astray, who leads all the world astray. He's misled me. He's misled you. If you say you haven't been misled by the devil, then you're saying that this book is wrong. You'd have to show me some proof of that. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. Okay. That's just about enough of this. You know, when your eyes are open, you need to change your behavior, or else you're willingly serving the adversary. This is kind of like that old saw from the Matrix movies that they always like to show on memes. Which pill are you going to take because you can't untake it? You want to know the truth, or are you happy being one of the many? I hope you want to know the truth. But once you know the truth, you got to live with it. You got to make your choices. This deception started a long, long time ago, which is why the disciples were talking about it so far back. You know, if you go to stay in Revelations here for a minute, let's go to Revelations, the very first chapter of Revelations, and we're going to start reading in verse 9. And here what we have is the only physical description of the Messiah. Now, as we read this, I want you to keep in mind that the Messiah came from the Middle East. He really could have only been of two looks. He could have been African, North African, or what we would call Middle Eastern today. He was not a blondish, with red highlighted, scraggly bearded, skinny white guy from Italy. He wasn't Caesar Borgia as painted by Michelangelo. In fact, if you read this description and then you think about that drawing, if Michelangelo was a police artist, he'd get fired. Okay. Yohanan, both your brother and co-sharer in pressure and in the reign and endurance of Yahshua Messiah, came to be on the island that is called Patmos for the word of Elohim and for the witness of Yahshua Messiah. I came to be in the Spirit on the day of Yahweh. On the day of Yahweh, we know what that is from Genesis. That's the seventh day. It's Shabbat, Sabbath. You would call it Saturn's day. And I heard behind me a loud voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. In the Greek, it's Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And write in a book what you see, and send it to the seven assemblies of Asia, to Ephesus and Smyrna and Pergamos and Thyatira and to Sardis and Philadelphia and Laodicea. And I turned to see the voice which spoke with me, and having turned I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands one like the son of Adam. Now, of course, John had seen it. It's the son of Adam, had seen Messiah. He knew who that was. He knew what he looked like. That's why he says it was like him. Dressed in a robe down to the feet, and girded about the chest with a golden band, and his head and hair were white as wool or as snow. Okay, so he had white hair. He didn't have scraggly blondish hair. And his eyes were as a flame of fire. Well, I guess they weren't blue. And his feet like burnished brass. Well, burnished brass is kind of a goldish color, a dark gold and shiny, as if refined in a furnace, means it was pure, so it was really shiny and that dark tan. And his voice was as the sound of many waters. Okay, so here's the description that we have of Messiah, vague as it is. He was a shiny gold guy with white hair and flaming eyes. And he didn't have a halo described behind his head, because the halo is part of sun worship. The halo represents the sun, no matter what's painted in front of it. So, this is part of the deception. I want you to understand. I don't care if he was black or he was brown or if he was olive drab. He was still the one who died for us, all of us. So, you just have to understand that the change is part of it. The change is just part of it. The physical. It's just more anti-Messiah brainwashing. You know, just like in our title verse. Let's go back to that really quick. Let's go to 2 Corinthians really quick. And we'll go to chapter 11 again. And this time we're going to start in verse 3 instead of in verse 1. But I'm afraid lest as the serpent deceived Eve, by his trickery, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Messiah. For indeed, if he who is coming proclaims another Yahshua, whom we have not proclaimed, or if you receive a different spirit which you have not received, or a different good news which you have not accepted, you put up with it well enough. You welcome it. You like it. For I reckon that I am not inferior to the most eminent emissaries. But even if I'm unskilled in word, yet not in knowledge, but in every way we have been manifested among you in all matters. What's he saying here? You are going, in verse 6, in verse 5, and specifically in verse 4. The other Messiah, you put up with it, you love it. You love that other Messiah, Paul says to these guys. So he was around back then, this other Messiah, this fake Messiah that came proclaiming Yeshua wrongly with false doctrine. You know, you need to work out what this is. You need to work out what, as Paul said, this is going to happen. And work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And not be swayed by fables and smooth ear tickling. Let's pop over to Daniel if you got a minute. Let's go to Daniel 7. Now this is an interesting, very interesting series. Daniel 7 is where we hear of the beasts that later are represented as an amalgamation in Revelations, and we're going to read the Revelation part 2. But in this part, and we'll prove it from the text, but I'll just say it before we start reading. This represents the 4 empires of the world between our time and Daniel's time. And then Daniel's descriptions here also represent various end times factions which come together as a whole. So each of these beasts that we're going to read about here represent 2 entities. The first one being empires that lead up between Daniel and the Roman Empire and the EU. And the second set of them is the end times nations. Okay, so we'll start here in verse 2. Daniel spoke and said, I was looking at my vision by night and saw the 4 winds of the heaven stirring up the great sea, and the 4 great beasts came up from the sea, different from one another. And the first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And I was looking until its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and it was given a man's heart. Now, in this first set of predictions or prophecy, that represents the Babylonian Empire. And we'll get to that in a minute. And see, another beast, a second like a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth and between its teeth. And they said this to it, arise, devour much flesh. This is the Medo-Persian Empire. And after this, I looked, and I saw another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. A leopard represents Greece. And the beast also had 4 heads, and rule was given to it. Now, when Greece's Macedonian king Alexander the Great passed, 4 of his generals took it over, and they ruled 4 of them. That's the 4 heads. And after this, I looked in the night visions and saw a 4th beast, fearsome and burly and exceedingly strong. And it had great iron teeth, the Iron Empire. And this is Rome. It devoured and it crushed and it trampled down the rest with its feet, its marching legions. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I was thinking about the horns, and I saw another horn, a little one, come up from among them. This is the Holy Roman Church. This is the Catholic, meaning universal church. And 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots before it. Well, these are the 3 sun-worshipping religions that were flourishing in Rome before they were amalgamated under Constantine. And see, eyes like the eyes of a man were in this horn, and a mouth speaking great words. And I was looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment white as snow, and the hair of his head was like clean wool. Again, white hair on him. His throne was flames of fire, its wheels burning fire. So let's, we're just going to skip down to 15 just because I don't want to spend all the time. We have a lot of verses. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was pierced within my body, and the visions of my head alarmed me. And I drew near to one of those who stood by me, a messenger or an angel, and asked him the certainty of this. And he spoke to me, and he made known to me the interpretation of the matters. These great beasts, which are 4 sovereigns which rise up from the earth. And then the set-apart ones of the Most High shall receive the rain. So after these world empires, then comes Messiah's reign and the co-regents of the saints, and possess the reign forever, even forever and ever. And that's it. When we take over the reign as saints, if I am blessed enough to be one, then that's it. Nothing comes after us. Then I desired for certainty concerning the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, very fearsome, and its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the rest with its feet. Bronze swords. And concerning the 10 horns which were on his head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, the horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke with great words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. Well, which empire still exists? Catholic Empire. The Church. I was looking, and this horn was fighting against the set-apart ones and prevailing against them. Okay, well, you see that the disciples, the Talmudim, the saints that follow the book, have now switched over, Protestant or not, to completely following the sun worshiper holidays instituted by the Church of Rome. Until the Ancient of Days came, when Yahshua comes back, and right ruling given to the set-apart ones of the Most High, this time came, and the set-apart ones took possession of the reign. But this ends. The Roman holidays end, and who ends it? Messiah, because it was never supposed to be there. We can keep going on and on and on. Let's go down to 25 at least. This is what he said. The fourth beast is the fourth reign on the earth, which is different from all the other reigns, and it devours all the earth and tramples it down and crushes it. And the 10 horns are the 10 sovereigns of this reign, and when they shall rise, and another shall rise after them, and it's different from the first ones, and it humbles the 3 sovereigns, 3 kings, 3 nations, and it speaks words against the Most High, and it wears out the set-apart ones of the Most High. It goes after the people who are whole Bible believers, and it intends to change appointed times and law, and they're given into its hand for time and times and half of a time. The saints are given over to this beast for the tribulation period of 3.5 years. Now, this is really, really key. You got to remember that Daniel didn't give a whit about anti-scriptural laws of his day. Rather than break the law of Torah, of Yahweh, he was thrown into a fiery furnace. He really believed in Torah. So when he's talking about law, when he's talking about the appointed times, he's talking about those of the book, of our Messiah, of our Creator. What does it say here in 25? This little horn that speaks these words, speaks words against the Most High, kind of like the Pope has been doing, and it wears out the set-apart ones of the Most High, and it intends to change appointed times. Appointed times, the Moedim, these are from Leviticus 23. These are the holidays of Yahweh. The book calls them Yahweh's holidays, not the Jews' holidays. It's one of the most irritating and uninformed things when people say, oh, you follow the Jewish holidays? Are you kidding me? Why don't you read your book before you say things like that? And law. And whose law is it? The law of the Jews? No, it's not the Jews' law. The Jews are one tribe of Israel. This was a law that was built to reign the entire planet. And they were given into its hand for time and times and half a time for the tribulation. Okay, so we got to keep going, because otherwise I'll get into this. We won't leave Daniel. But in order for this to happen, there needs to have been authorization. Who authorizes these changes that this little horn makes? Well, there is somebody. It's not solely on them. They do have a controller, and we can find out who that is by going back to Hazor, Revelation, and we're going to start in chapter 13, and we're going to find out who gave them the authorization. Hold on to your hats, people. And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw beasts coming up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy. Now these are the end times nations that refer back to these from Daniel, which is why we're reading it next. And the beast I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him power. What? What was that? Who gave him his power? The dragon gave him his power, and his throne, and great authority. What? I guess if we follow those, then we're following the dragon. And I saw one of the heads as having been slain to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the earth marveled after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, who gave authority to the beast, because they were worshiping in this beast system. They were keeping all these sun worshiper holidays. Who were they worshiping? The book says this plainly. There's no interpretation needed. They worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying who was like the beast and who was able to fight with him. So I guess when you go to a Sunday church and you celebrate sunrise service on Easter Sunday, you're worshiping the devil, the dragon. He changed times. So if you go to a church that keeps Christmas, which used to be called Solus Invictus, the festival of the unquenchable, unbeatable sun, you're worshiping the devil, according to the Bible, without any interpretation needed. He changed the laws. So if you're not paying attention to Torah, if you're not paying attention to the law of the Bible, but instead are following the law of these churches, which got authority from the dragon, and they worshipped the dragon who gave authority, who the slave is. If you worship the slave, you worship the master. I hope you guys are sitting down for that, you people that are in these Sunday churches. It's not your pastor's fault, usually. They just never made full proof of their ministry. They never went through to find where it said these things. They just listened in seminary, and it's hard. It's a hard thing. I know it was hard for me. Let's go down to verse 7 here. And it was given to him to fight with the set-apart ones, the saints, and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation. He's going to wear out the saints. Now, I want you to understand about these holidays. I want you to understand. Let's go to Leviticus, because I think it's important that you understand what the book says and not what man teaches you or what you heard from your Sunday church. Let's go to Leviticus 23, and we're going to start in verse 1, and we're just going to read down through verse 3. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahweh." It doesn't say Jews there. That's Yahweh. That's a tetragrammaton. "What you are to proclaim as set-apart gatherings. My appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, a set-apart gathering. You do no work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your dwellings." So the Sabbath seems like it's pretty important. It's one of the 10 commandments. It's one of the 10 headings in the contract called the covenant between us and our Creator. Not the feasts of the Jews, not the Sabbath of the Jews. We can even find out more. Let's go back a little further if you got a minute. We'll go back to Genesis. Let's go to Genesis, and we'll just go right to Genesis 2, and we'll start in verse 1. How far back does the seventh day Sabbath go? How important is it to our Messiah? How important is it to our Creator, Yahweh? Okay, let's read in Genesis. "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their array, and in the seventh day Yahweh completed his work which he had done. And he rested on the seventh day from all of his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and set it apart, because on it he rested from all of his work which Elohim had in creating. These are the births of the heavens and the earth, and they were created in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens." Now, before he knew he was going to do this, before he even got there. Look what this says. "Now, no shrub of the field was yet on earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground." So before the greenery and the rain, and before man was created, Yahweh knew. Before man even existed, that Sabbath was the seventh day. And look how tricky the adversary is. The first day is now the last day of the weekend. When you look at it at your week, it doesn't matter what the calendar says. When you make your plans, you plan for Saturday and Sunday, right? Oh, I'm going to do that Saturday and Sunday. Sunday is in our minds and in our hearts and in our souls when we're in this other system, the last day of the week, not the first. Think about it. It's terrible. Let's pop forward to Luke, because I know we got to mainly stay in the Greek scriptures for this, because otherwise people will say I'm just a Jew or something like that. All right, let's go forward. I said Luke. Let's go to Luke. And we're going to go to Luke chapter 4. And we're going to pop down to 14 if you got a minute. And Yahshua returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and news of him went out through the surrounding country, and he was teaching in their congregations and being praised by all. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And according to his practice, this is Yeshua's practice, he went into the congregation, not on Sunday, there was no one there, on the Sabbath day, the seventh day. And he stood up to read. Well, just like I do, just like we do, just like everyone who is studying to show themselves approved do. We read the book. And, it's interesting that it was Isaiah that was handed to him, because he read a lot from Isaiah. Okay, so that's just to show that our Messiah kept, Yahshua's kept the Sabbath. Should we do as he does, or should we do as Rome has said to do? Oh, Paul. Oh, everyone says Paul. I can hear you. Well, Paul said, okay, let's go to Acts and see when Paul kept Sabbath. Acts 11. Yeah, because I know that's Paul is the word. Like somehow Paul was strong enough to overrule Yahshua, even though he didn't in any way. Let's go to Acts 11. We'll read 1 through 9. And the emissaries and the brothers who were in Yehuda heard that the nations also received the word of Elohim. When Kepha, that's Peter, went down to Yerushalayim, that's Jerusalem, those of the circumcision were contending him, those are the Pharisees, saying, you went into uncircumcised men and ate with them? But Kepha began and set it forth in order, saying, I was in the city of Yahshua praying, and in a trance I saw a vision, a certain vessel descending like a great sheet, coming down from the heaven by the four corners, and it came to me. Having looked into it, I perceived, and I saw four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping creatures, and the birds of heaven. And I heard a voice saying, Rise up, Kepha, slay and eat. But I said, Not at all, master, because whatever is common or unclean has never entered into my mouth. And the voice answered me again from heaven, What Elohim has cleansed, do not you consider common. And this took place 3 times, and all were drawn up into the heaven. What? Did he just get told to eat unclean meat? I know a lot of people say that. Let's keep reading. And see, immediately 3 men stood before the house where I was, having been sent to me from Caesarea. And the Spirit said to me to go with them, not doubting at all. And these 6 brothers also went with me, and we went into the man's house. And he told us how he had seen a messenger, an angel, standing in his house, who said to him, Send men to Yahshua and call for Shimon, who is also called Kepha, Simon Peter, who shall speak to you words by which you shall be saved, you and all your house. And as I began to speak, the set-apart spirit fell upon them, and as upon us at the beginning. And I remember the voice of the Master, how he said, Yohanan indeed immersed in water, but you shall be immersed in the set-apart spirit. So if Elohim gave them the same gift as he gave us when we believed on the Master Yahshua Messiah, how was I able to withstand Elohim? And having heard this, they were silent and praised Elohim, saying, Then Elohim has indeed also given to the nations repentance to life. Isn't this interesting? I mean, there's more to this than eating pork. Then indeed, they were scattered because of the pressures that arose over Stephen passed through to Phoenicia and Cyprus and Antioch, speaking the word to no one except the Yehudim only, the Jews only. But some of them were men from Cyprus and Cyrene, who when they came to Antioch spoke to the Hellenists, the Greeks, bringing the good news of the Master Yahshua. And the hand of the Master was with them, and a great number, having believed, turned to the Master. And word of it came to the ears of the assembly in Jerusalem, and they sent out Barnabas to go as far as Antioch, who having come and seen the favor of Elohim was glad, and encouraged them all with the purpose of heart to cleave to the Master Yahshua, because he was a good man, and filled with the Holy Spirit, the set-apart Spirit, and with belief, and large numbers were added to the Master. And then Barnabas went to Tarsus to seek Shaul. And having found him, he brought him to Antioch. And it came to be that for an entire year they came together in the assembly and taught large numbers. When did they come together? In the assembly, on Shabbat. And they taught ones that were called, and the taught ones were called Messianists first in Antioch. Let's read 26 in the King James, because I think it'll be easier for modern ears to hear the familiar. And when he had found him, Paul, he brought him into Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people. And the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. And he came there on Sabbath. And that's when they were Christians. The Christians were also Israelites. You know? Messianists. Set apart. You know, Israel introduced Yahshua to the world. If you aren't following Yahshua in Israel's way, you're following another Yahshua. You're following Roman sun worship. You know, Sunday is the day of the sun. Sunday Sabbath is Roman. Sabbath switched over because of the command of Rome. Another change of laws. In the Bible, we're told that the evening and the morning is a day. So day starts at evening. Now it's the middle of the night in the Roman way. You don't even know when it could be tomorrow when you think it's yesterday. You know, you can't tell. It's dark outside. It's not easy. It's not light. If you look up solar monotheism and you'll get it, because it's all of this stuff comes from that. If you're following the sun, then you're following a false Elohim. Rome took over. Halos, if your assembly has halos on your Messiah, you're worshiping the sun. You know. Let's go to Matthew 2 really quick. I'm going to have to take a break. I might end this here for today and then finish this up, but I really want this whole lesson to go together because there's so much to it. Matthew 2 and 1. Now when Yahshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea and in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men. How many? Doesn't say, does it? Your nativity got 3? Ask yourself where that comes from. Because that's a false thing too. From the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born king of the Jews, Yehudim? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. And when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Messiah should be born. And they said unto him, because they were learned, they knew what the book said, in Bethlehem of Judea. For thus it is written by the prophets. And thou, Bethlehem, is in the land and of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. And as you can see here, it also can mean feed. That's an important note, because he does both. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and he said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when you have found him, bring word again, that I may come and worship him also. Now, of course, he didn't want to worship him. He wanted to kill him. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. Now, it's a good thing they bought him all that wealth, because that poor carpenter was about to have to run to Egypt to save his son, adopted though he may have been. And being warned of Yah in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed, these are the wise men, into their own country another way. And when they were departed, behold, the messenger of Yahweh appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, a little well healed from those gifts. And he was there until the death of Herod, and that it might be fulfilled what was spoken by Yahweh, by the prophet, saying, out of Egypt I have called my son. And then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under. Wait a minute. Didn't he know it was December 25th? Couldn't they have figured that out? No. Or maybe he could have, narrowed it down and said, anyone born in the month of December to mid-January. No. He had no clue. He had no clue. because the only clue that we had was that he was born in a sukkah, which traditions of men now call a manger. Okay, I wonder why. That's another study. Let me not go down those rabbit holes. No date. The only clue we have is it could have been Sukkot. He gave him the treasure, Yahweh did, for the flight. Now, whose birthday is the 25th? You can do a little study on that. You can do your own study on that and see what it says. You know, Yahshua had no beginning. He created the earth. How was he going to have a beginning? He came through Mary. You know, it was a travel. And it's interesting that Sukkot is a travel holiday, isn't it? And if he was born in a sukkah, why was there a sukkah set up in front of an inn? Because it was Sukkot. Or Sukkot, as the Hebrew says it. All of these Christmas traditions come from other holy systems. The three wise men, the bow to your Christmas tree to retrieve your gifts from it. All of these things. You know, let's just, I didn't want to spend all day, but I'm doing it. Let's go to Jeremiah 10 and see if we can find, long before Messiah came through Mary, let's see if we can find Christmas in the book. And just to shut off the strong numbers, I'm gonna go off to on the ISR. Hear the word which Yahweh speaks to you, O house of Yisrael. Thus says Yahweh, do not learn the way of the nations, and be not awed by the signs of heaven, for the nations are awed by them. For the laws of these people are worthless. Well, here we have a prophet saying that the human laws are worthless. So maybe Daniel wasn't talking about human laws. For the laws of these people are worthless. For one cuts a tree from the forest, the work of the hands of a craftsman with a cutting tool. Christmas tree. They beautify it with silver and gold. I guess they didn't call it tinsel back then. They strengthen it with nails and hammers so that it does not topple. You know, they build that little cross on the bottom. They are like a rounded post, and they do not speak. They have to be carried, because they do not walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they do no evil, and nor is it in them to do any good. Okay, now a little background for you that you should look up tree worship, and Norse tree worship, Celtic tree worship, Middle Eastern grove worship. Look up these things, because this is where all of this came from. This is what the Roman Church brought in through Constantine's command. When in the middle of winter, around the solstice, and that used to be the solstice around the time, and now it falls more a few days earlier, but it used to be that the solstice was around the 25th, and you start seeing a lot of pagan deities that have that birthday, like Osiris or Tammuz. You gotta look it up, and as a sign of everlasting life, they would kill a tree and bring it into their house to chase away devils. Maybe you should ask yourself why those devils were there that needed chasing away. It doesn't matter. There is none like you, O Yahweh. You are great, and great is your name and might. Who would not fear you, O sovereign of the nations? For this is your due. For among the wise men of the nations, and in all their reigns, there is none like you. Now, the people who do this, they are brutish, animal-like, and foolish. An instruction of worthlessness is the tree. Silver is beaten into plates. It is brought from Tarshish, and gold from Mufaz, the work of the craftsman, and of the hands of the smith, draped in blue and purple, and all of them the work of craftsmen, skilled ones. So your Christmas tree that you got, not only is it worthless and animal-like, it's against the scripture, and it's against Yahweh. That's not what it means to me, I can hear you saying. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter what it means to you. It matters what it means to him. Read the first commandment. But Yahweh is truly Elohim. He is the living Elohim and the everlasting sovereign. At his wrath the earth shakes, and nations are unable to stand his displeasure. Say this to them. The Elad, the Creator, that did not make the heavens and the earth, shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens. He has made the earth by his power, and he has established the world by his wisdom, and has stretched out the heavens by his understanding. Then, when he makes his voice heard, there is a roaring of waters in the heaven, and he makes vapors rise from the ends of the earth. The lightnings for rain he has made, and brings wind from his treasuries. Everyone is brutish knowledge. Every smith is put to shame by his idol. You got a tree in your house? It's an idol that you bow to. You teach your children to bow to in falsehood. It's a myth. You're animal-like when you do it, and you will be put to shame if you have it. For his molded image is falsehood, and there is no spirit in them. They are worthless, a work of mockery. You're mocking our Creator. You have a Christmas tree? That's not what it means to me. Well, you're mocking our Creator. In the time of their punishment, they perish. Oh, what? If you have a Christmas tree, you perish? Well, that's what the book says. I'm not saying it. That's what the book says. The portion of Yaakov is not like these, for he's the maker of all. This is the Elohim of Jacob. And Israel is the tribe of his inheritance. Yahweh of hosts is his name. Gather up your bundle from the ground, you who live under siege. Are you fooled by this? Get off the ground. Stand high. Learn what the book says. For this says Yahweh, see, at this time I am hurling out the inhabitants of the land, and shall distress them, so they feel it. Woe to me for my breaking. My wound is grievous, but I say, this is my sickness, and I bear it. My tent has been ravaged, and all my cords have been broken, and my children have gone from me, and they are no more. There is no one to pitch my tent anymore, or to set up my curtains. Google wants to get involved in this. For the shepherds have become brutish, and they have not sought Yahweh. Oh, look at that. The teachers, the pastors, have become animals that do not seek Yahweh. Therefore they did not understand, and all their flocks scattered. See, it has come, the voice of a report and a great shaking out of the land of the north, to make the cities of Yehudah a waste, a habitation of jackals. O Yahweh, I know the way of a man is not for himself. It is not for a man who walks to direct his own steps. O Yahweh, chastise me, but with right ruling, not in your displeasure, lest you bring me to nothing. Pour out your wrath on the nations who do not know you, and on the tribes who do not call on your name, for they have eaten up Yaakov. They've eaten up the people who follow him, and devoured him and consumed him and laid waste his home. Oh my goodness, do you have a Christmas tree? Is there one in your attic right now? Are you home? Maybe you should get it out of your house right now. I'll wait. Okay, anyway. I hate to do this. I really do. I don't want to sound flippant about it. I kind of do it. Sunday worshipers, Christmas worshipers, you're worshiping the devil. Who set up Sunday? The devil. Who set up the Christmas, the halo, the Easter, the unclean meats? The devil. Christmas is fake love. It's fake. What do you do on Christmas? What gifts do you give to the poor on Christmas that you don't do the rest of the year? What about Easter? What about Good Friday? What about Good Friday and Easter? How does that fit in? You know what? I'm going to take a break for a minute, and then we'll come back to this. In fact, I might actually end this here just because I'm running a little bit long. But you know what? If I end this here, and you've listened this far, keep going. Keep going. Listen to the second part. Because, let me tell you something. This is a salvation issue for you. And I'm warning you. I'm doing my job. I'm warning you to make sure you're following the scriptures. And I'm warning myself too. And I'm trying, and I constantly pull apart my life to look at it. Because what should be first in our life? Study to show yourself approved. I'm going to end this here for right now. Go to see part B of this, or part 2, or whatever it ends up being named, as soon as you can, as soon as you're done with this. In the meantime, peace and shalom.